Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most powerful and honestly kind of mind-bending ideas from Morgan Housel's incredible book, The Psychology of Money. We are breaking down Chapter 6, which is called Tails You Win. All right, let's just jump right in with the big idea, the one that turns so much financial advice on its head. Housel says, it is not intuitive that an investor can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. I mean, just think about that for a second. How on earth is that possible? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to piece together today. And to really get our heads around this, we're not starting with stocks or bonds, nope. We're starting with fine art and the secrets of one legendary collector. So let me introduce you to Heinz Bear Gruen. He was one of the most successful art collectors of the 20th century. Now, you'd think his genius was in picking winner after winner, right? But his real strategy was, well, it was to buy a lot of art. We're talking thousands of pieces. The secret to his unbelievable wealth wasn't being right all the time. Actually, most of his collection was pretty unremarkable. His entire fortune was built on a tiny, tiny handful of masterpieces by artists like Picasso and Matisse that didn't just appreciate. They went to the moon. And that story, right there, is a perfect illustration of this powerful concept called long tails. This is the key to understanding how these crazy outlier events are what drive almost all success. So what exactly are long tails? Well, you can think of them as the extreme outliers, the long shots. In pretty much any field, business, investing, you name it, a tiny number of events, these tail events, are responsible for the vast majority of the results. What this means is the average outcome doesn't really matter that much. It's the extremes that change everything. And listen, this isn't some obscure theory just for art collectors or statisticians. This winner-take-all principle is happening everywhere you look, from the movies we all watch to the stocks in our retirement accounts. Just take Walt Disney. By the mid-1930s, his studio had made over 400 cartoons. And you know what most of them had in common? They were losing a ton of money. Seriously, the company was teetering on the edge of collapse. And then came 83 minutes of film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That one single movie, one massive tail event, paid off every single one of the company's debts, funded a brand new studio, and basically saved the entire Disney empire. The world of venture capital is maybe the perfect real-world example of this. Look at this chart. A massive 65% of VC investments lose money. Their total write-offs, poof, gone. But the real story, the part that matters, is in that tiny little sliver you can barely even see, just 0.5% of all their investments. Those are the home runs, the 50x returns that generate basically all of the industry's profits. So right about now, you're probably thinking, okay, I get it. That's for risky startups. But the public stock market, the safe option, that's got to be different, right? Well, you might want to think again. And wow, does this chart drive that point home? This shows the returns of the Russell 3000 index, a huge, diverse mix of public companies. Between 1980 and 2014, a staggering 40% of these companies were catastrophic failures. They basically went to zero. So where did all the gains for the entire index come from? From a tiny group of outsized winners, just 7% of the companies. All the returns came from just 7%. Okay, so if massive, life-changing success comes from these super rare events, then what's the most important skill an investor can possibly have? It's not being a genius stock picker. It's not about being right all the time. It's actually something way simpler. Endurance. This little table here says it all. You've got 3 investors. Jim and Tom, they get spooked during recessions, which, by the way, only happen about 22% of the time, and they sell their stocks. But Sue does nothing. She just hangs on for the ride. And just look at the result. By simply surviving the downturns and staying in the game, she ends up with way, way more money. Her survival was her strategy. And this isn't just for us regular folks. Even the legendary Peter Lynch, one of the greatest investors who ever lived, admitted, if you're terrific in this business, you're right 6 times out of 10. That means even the absolute best are flat out wrong 40% of the time. Being wrong isn't an accident, it's just part of the game. And what about the man himself, the Oracle of Omaha? Warren Buffett has owned somewhere around 400 or 500 different stocks in his life. But he said himself that he made the vast majority of his fortune on just 10 of them. His entire legacy is a story of tail events. So, let's bring this all home. What do all these stories and all this data actually mean for how we should think about being wrong and about being right? When you really get this, It forces you to completely change your relationship with failure. It is perfectly normal, in fact, it's expected, that most of your ideas and investments are going to fall flat. That doesn't mean you're a bad investor. It's just the price of admission you pay to be in a game that's driven by a few spectacular wins. Success is all about surviving the many small losses long enough to be around for that one big one. So, I want to leave you with a few questions to chew on. First, knowing all this, how does it change how you look at your own financial mistakes? Are they really mistakes, or are they just the inevitable cost of searching for a huge winner? And second, think about this. If you can be wrong more often than you're right and still end up wildly successful, what's the single most important financial skill to build? Is it being a great forecaster? Is it picking the perfect stock? Or is it something much more durable, like patience? And finally, here's the big one to leave you with. What part of your financial life, whether it's your career, your investments, maybe a side hustle, what part has the potential to be your winning tail? That one thing that could become an outsized, game-changing success. That is the incredible power of tails you win.